Hey guys, welcome to another video, and it looks a little weird because you're going to see both intros from both of my channels because it's going to be a cross-channel video. It's a video that will cover for both hobbies here, for scale modeling and wargaming painting. So basically someone asked me, and I get a lot of questions about this, is how to get an airbrush set and what airbrush to get and what you need to do to start airbrushing. So this is what this video is about. Okay, so you want to get an airbrush set to set up. First of all, you have to expect to spend some money on this. Okay, there's no easy, real way around it because everywhere you go, you're just going to spend money to get a setup for all the different options available out there. So expect to spend at least around $300–350 for a decent set of stuff. Okay, first of all, let's talk about why you want to get an airbrush. Airbrush makes things so much easier, especially in the scale modeling hobby, especially in the wargaming painting miniature hobby. Different techniques, however, though, but you could get some really cool effects out of it. If you look around on the on YouTube, you'll see some of the painters that actually use an airbrush as part of their procedures for miniature painting, and you can tell you can do some really cool effects on there and make some realistic looking effects. So it does make your job easier. It does make painting figures easier, and it does make painting scale models really easy as well. Let's talk about the airbrushes. Okay, there's different types of setup of airbrushes, and we're going to go over it. Okay, there's two types of airbrush in the sense of control, and there's throughout three types of setup for those type of airbrushes, and let's go over those. Okay, airbrushes come in two types of spray setup. Okay, you got single action and you got dual action brushes. Okay, the single action, all it does is when you press down the trigger, it sprays the paint. Okay, and when it sprays the paint, it's always a static type of wideness to the sprays depending on the size of the needle. Okay, and these type of airbrushes, to get a finer spray, you're going to have to change the type of the needle size if it's available on your airbrush. Okay, otherwise you're just stuck with one size type of spray. The second type of spray setup on an airbrush is the dual action. Now, dual action allows you a lot more control. You press down on the trigger and air comes out, and you slowly pull it back and the paint starts coming out. Okay, now when you pull less, the less paint will come out, creating a narrow line, versus if you pull all the way back the trigger, then you get a really wide line. Okay, and that also depends on the size of your needle too, and some airbrushes allow you to change the size of the needle. For example, this velocity allows for two types of needle sizes: fine, very fine, and fine. I'll show you a quick example. If you had a single action airbrush, you push down on the trigger and the paint will come out, and all you have is just that option of the wideness of the spray. With the dual action airbrush, you have control by how much amount that you pull back. Once you push down the trigger, the air comes out. Then you slowly pull back, and it controls how much paint comes out of the airbrush. So you can get really thin lines with more detailed work. And then when you pull back more, you can adjust the width of the line. For example, if you're going to be spraying a wide area, then you would pull back all the way and get a larger spray. So it's all about control on the action of the airbrush you pick. The next thing we're gonna have to look at is the load type. Okay, and that's depend on how the paint is loaded into the airbrush. This here is a bottom feed airbrush, meaning that you could connect your cups and bottles up into the bottom feed here, and then when you spray, the paint will be pulled up from the airbrush and then out to the nozzle like this. Okay, it's a little harder to clean, but it allows you to load large bottles underneath if you want to do some massive spraying. Okay, most of the time, probably all the time, you won't need this for scale modeling or miniature painting. Okay, the second type of load is gravity feed. In the gravity feed here, the cup sits up here. Some airbrushes you could detach the cup to put a smaller cup or a bigger cup, but mainly the paint is loaded up into the cup here, and by using gravity, the paint flows down and out of the nozzle when the air is pushed out of it. Okay, the third type is a side feed. Unfortunately, I don't have a side feed airbrush, but what it is that the nozzle is on the side here, and the cup or bottles will be connected like this, okay, onto the side of the airbrush, and the paint will leave from into the side and out of the nozzle that way. Now, this is really preference, okay. I originally started with bottom feed, okay, and it was okay, but the problem is one thing I don't like is sometimes the cup will fall off if you don't put it in tight enough. Okay. The second thing is that this bugs me when I'm painting and doing things. The feed here gets in the way. All right. On the gravity feed, it's much easier and much more precise, and I can tilt it up and down without messing with the way it's hooked up, and it also prevents spillage. If I could tilt it a little bit more, depending on how much paint I have it on the cup here, and spray down into the model, and it won't spill out. Unfortunately, for the for the bottom feed here, if I tilt too much, I don't have much tilting room. The paint starts spilling out, and there's just so much you can do with the cup on the bottom here, unless you're using a bottle. So for scale modeling and painting miniatures, what I suggest is getting a dual feed airbrush for control and a gravity feed cup. Okay, but again, it's really preference, but if you really going to start out, this is the type of brush you want to get. To keep within the budget that I mentioned, about $350, here are some recommended airbrush. Okay, in the Badger line, we have the Patriot 105 that goes for about $100. And I highly recommend in this line the Renegade Velocity, $130. In the Iwata brand, we have the Revolution CR for $80, and we have the Iwata Eclipse HPCS for $130. I heard about Grex, and you can get the Grex XG for $130. And a really popular brand that's coming up in the market is the Harder and Steinbeck, and that's a German-made airbrush, and I heard it's really good. The Ultra Edition is $80, and the Evolution Solo is $130. Now, I have used Posh airbrushes before, and I recommend staying away from them. I never liked them. I always had problems with them. Some people might have better luck with it, but I can't recommend that airbrush. Okay, now let's talk about air sources. Okay, now in order for an airbrush to work, it has to blow air through it. The whole point of it is it's blowing air. The paint goes and mixes in with the air. The paint gets aerosoled and hits the surface of the model and sticks. Okay, that's a really layman terms of how the airbrush works. But I'm not going to get into how it all completely works. That's for a different video. So this is probably where it gets a little more funky. All right, trying to figure out the type of air source that you want to use for airbrushing. And it could get quite expensive, but there is actually other options other than getting your air compressor that you see that sits on all these modelers' desks. The first option is using a air propellant cans. Now they look like your basic spray can, but they blow out air, and that's basically all you do. You get a cap like this from Badger's. Okay, and Badger actually sells a really cheap airbrush set with this cap here and a can, and it's going to cost about $60 or something, but it comes with a really cheap airbrush, the really cheap airbrush, so I wouldn't suggest just getting that set. Okay, the second option here, and this is quite heavy. This is a 5-pound air tank, okay, and this is basically something you see under those CO2 drink fountain dispensers. Now what you can do is go out and get CO2 and get this refilled every X so a month. And you could go to these places, these industrial places, which sells this. You lease out a tank, and that's about $60, and you get a refill for about roughly around 15 to 20 bucks. And what you're going to have to do is also get a regulator, which costs about 50 bucks. Okay, and the regulator regulates the air that comes out of the tank, basically, so you don't blow a hole in your airbrush or in your models. Okay, and it also controls the PSIs of the airs coming out of the tank. Okay, so roughly you're gonna spend about $100 for getting a tank and leasing a tank and stuff like that. The problem with this is maintenance. You gotta go and get it refilled every so often. Great thing about this though, this is silent. I mean, the only thing you hear coming out of this is the air coming out of your airbrush. Other than that, it's really silent. It's really mobile. You don't need to hook it up or plug it in anywhere, and it goes. Now you can get different types of air tanks. You can buy them on eBay or your industrial places. The really nice ones, you can buy really nice ones, 10 gallons, 25 gallons. You know, if you're gonna go with this option, then get a big tank, and like a 25-pound tank, and that'll last you for a while between each refill. Okay, now let's just talk about regular compressors. Compressors come in many types of compressing. There's piston driven compressors and diaphragm compressors. Okay, stay away from the diaphragm compressors. Those are loud as hell. Okay, and it's really outdated stuff. Okay, get the new piston driven engine compressors, and they'll last you a little longer. Alright, this is the layout of the Iwata Studio Series Smart Jet. Now, here is the compressor itself. This the black body here. Okay, it comes out. The air comes out into a coil hose, which is supposed to prevent moisture from getting out of this, from coming out of the compressor and into your airbrush, as well as it goes and passes through a drip here, which catches moisture, and it goes into this. Is also a regulator. Right here, it shows you how many psi is being shot out of the airbrush. From there, comes out of the hose and into your airbrush. Okay, so that is the basic setup of the Smart Jet here, and basic setup of a air compressor, the most common air compressors you see out there. So now that we've got that out of the way, you've seen the tank. Okay, you've seen the compressor. I was putting them together. There are some compressors out there that comes with a tank. So what it does is that the compressor sits on the tank, and then it fills up the tank, and then you would spray the air out of the tank itself. When the tank starts getting empty, the compressor kicks in and fills in the tank. Okay, great thing about this is less noise. The only time it'll make noise is when it's filling up the tank. Okay, and when your tank is filled up, you just spray out, adjust your PSIs on the regulator to whatever you need it to be. Recommendations on a compressor. Now, I did a lot of research on this, so hopefully this will help other people. Originally, I wanted to get the Airbrush Depot's TC20T, because it's a made in China kind of compressor. Okay, it's like a generic stuff, but I heard it does okay. It lasts pretty long. You could also get the TC20, which doesn't have the tank itself. But for the TC-20T, you're going to be paying about $150 for it. The one without the tank is $130. Okay. Originally, I was thinking about getting that, and then I saw the Grex 1/8 horsepower portable piston air compressor. That runs for $189, and it has an auto shut off. And I believe you could adjust it or something like that. I was going to get that, and that's the reason why I went down to an actual Dick Blick store. They didn't have that in stock, but they did have the Smart Jet Studio. And we're going to get into the Smart Jet Studio now. And it's a pretty good compressor. The only thing about the Smart Jet Studio that I have, which runs about $230, is that it doesn't come with a full compressor. If I wanted to lower the PSIs on it, I would have to open the valve here on the moisture trap, and then let out some air in order to adjust the PSIs. Okay, thank you for joining me on this video here. I hope it really helped those guys out there that are looking to get in airbrushing for scale modeling or for miniature painting. Okay, if you have any questions, shoot me a mail through YouTube or do some comments below, and I'll answer them the best of my abilities. I will answer any questions you have. So that's about it. So like the video, subscribe to me, all that other YouTube bullshit, and I'll see you out there. For more tutorial videos on how to paint your figures, check out Les's channel at Awesome Paint Job. For cool terrain tips and tutorials, check out Chris at Terrain Noob.